Humpty Dumpty arrived in Pattaya with a suitcase that rattled like distant rain and a cautious optimism tucked under his shell. The city greeted him with a heat that smelled of grilled seafood and engine oil, neon signs blinking like the teeth of a restless shore. He had come to see if a life could be gentled into something new. And Pattaya, with its dazzling chaos, felt like a place where broken things might be claimed and repaired. On his second night, he wandered into a small bar, where the music was a slow, smoky tide. She stood by the counter, the kind of woman whose smile was practiced enough to be soft and honest enough to sting. She moved like someone who had learned to make room for other people's loneliness. Humpty bought a drink, and between the notes of an old pop song they began to talk. Mai had hands that worked like tools. They could count change, arrange plates, fold worry into small bundles of calm. She spoke of a brother learning to read, and a mother whose knees ached, of dreams that had to be measured against rent and rice. Humpty, whose story was an old one of falling and reassembling, found himself confessing things he had never said aloud, his fear of toppling again, the cramped places where his cracks lived. She listened without flinching, her eyes a harbor. For a week they carved out a small orbit. They ate pad thai under a fan that smelled faintly of curry. They rode a battered motorbike to a quieter bay, helmets clacking together like tentative laughter. I taught him how to bargain in Thai. He taught her to read postcards from a place where the sea was colder and his hands were steadier. Once on a rooftop watching lanterns hitch themselves to the sky, Humpty believed the world smelled exactly like possibility. But Pattaya was practical and blunt. Money arrived in envelopes, transactions wrapped in kindness. One evening Humpty noticed a pause in the street to take a sealed envelope from a man who looked less like a lover and more like a ledger. She smiled at Humpty afterward as if the exchange had been nothing. He pretended not to notice, but something heavy lodged in his ribs. When she told him the truth, it came like rain. There was a man who offered stability, steady help that could shelter her family. Her affection for Humpty existed, she said, but it could not be wrenched into defiance of needs that were real and urgent. I care for you, she said, touching his shell with a tenderness that made his seams ache. But I cannot risk my family for a maybe. Humpty wanted a grand declaration, a rescue that would rewrite choices. Instead, he gave her the only thing he had that was honest, his understanding. They walked along the same beach where they had once laughed until their ribs hurt. The tide, indifferent, smoothed their footprints away. At the pier, they hugged him awkward. Human Thing and Mai walked back into the market light, a small shadow growing no smaller. Humpty kept the shell necklace she had accepted from him, and a coin she had tucked into his palm like a benediction. On the plane home, he read her postcard, "Be gentle." He learned what gentle meant. Not forcing holds where they do harm, not patching over what must be chosen freely. Time proved its slow alchemy. The ache thinned, softening into memory. Sometimes the smell of mangoes or the echo of city music would steal him back to that small bar, to Mai's practiced smile. He carried those pieces as if they were precious and fragile, mended by remembrance and the patient work of becoming whole again.